January 7th, 2025. The eyes of the world are on Los Angeles. What happened that day left many survivors of this storm feeling strange and terrified in the past. The logic of people dealing with fires was very simple. If the fire is big, add people. Fall off the plane if there are not enough people. If the ground doesn't work, get on the heavy bulldozer. But on this day, this sea of people tactic, which has been used by all mankind for decades, has completely failed in a very serious review after the fact. A top fire commander in Los Angeles County has spoken the truth to the camera. He said that even if he had transferred all the fire engines in Los Angeles at that time, even if you fill in all the firefighters, it's not going to change anything. That sounds pretty desperate, right? But those were the very real rules of physics that day. Because of what happened in Palisades and Eaton Canyon, it's not the kind of wildfire that burns leaves and bushes in our traditional understanding at all. In those few short hours, wind gusts soared to around 100 miles per hour. This wind carries fire, turning modern neighborhoods into steel furnaces. When the flames are no longer crawling on the ground, honestly, it becomes a rainstorm of fire when the fuel that burns is no longer dead grass. It's the car in your garage, the fence in the yard, even the history of the house itself, so it wasn't a fire. This is a city that self-destructs on its own. Today we will pull the timeline of this event, see how this so-called urban fire storm broke through the bottom line of human defense. The morning before the disaster, everything doesn't look like the end of the world. One could even say there is a confidence in the air born of ignorance, especially for Palisades District Fire Volunteer Brigade. They think they're pretty well prepared. This team, organized by local residents, has just received its fire certification in the fall of 2024. Purchased trucks and water pipes. In the words of one of the member machines and later vernacular, we thought we could handle it. But in fact, it's like we're playing football and we're running head-on into the World Series of Fire Protection. Why is the actual situation so different from what they anticipated? Because the powder cartridges from this fire started piling up 2 years ago. There's a very counterintuitive engineering phenomenon here, which is one of the primary culprits that caused this fire to get out of control. It turned out to be the good weather in the past 2 years. California will receive an unusually high amount of rain in 2023 and 2024. These 2 years of wetness have made the vegetation in the mountains grow wildly. On the satellite data graph, coastal green vegetation coverage in Southern California has skyrocketed to one of the highest levels in the past 40 years. In the eyes of a safety engineer, these lush greenery are not landscapes at all. They are stocked with amazing fuel loads. Then God suddenly screwed the faucet to death. After experiencing a major vegetation explosion, Los Angeles immediately entered an 8-month period of extreme drought and with record-breaking temperatures. According to the rules of previous years, the rain that was supposed to fall in October or November was not seen until mid-January of the following year. This violent transition from urgent to urgent triggers an effect known as a weather curve. That's when the laws of physics start to show their cruel side. As temperatures rise, the atmosphere becomes a giant, extremely thirsty sponge. The capacity of hot air to hold water vapor has increased exponentially. When there is no moisture in the air to replenish, and this sponge is going to frantically extract water from the surface plants, from the hedges and even from the wooden structures. Come January 7th, the data shows the dryness of the local vegetation and building structures. It's worse than at any time in the last 150 years. All flammable materials are dried to the extreme, like piles of gunpowder in the open air. It's at a critical point of extreme instability. The last thing to pull the trigger is the wind. Santa Ana Peak is not uncommon this season, but the data forecast for that day was creepy, and the sustained wind speed of 50-60 miles disappeared. Wind gusts can even reach over 80 miles. At the same time, the relative humidity plummeted to 10%. Under these extreme conditions, nature rarely produces lightning. Almost all fires are man-made. It's called accidental cremation. This means that as long as someone is at the wrong time, A little bit of Mars in the wrong place. 2 years' worth of dry fuel. With the thirstiest atmosphere in decades, catastrophe is no longer a matter of probability. It's the inevitable physical consequence. If you are watching a Hollywood blockbuster, we usually look forward to a heroic appearance. Fire broke out. Fire brigade siren. This airplane is coming. Then the crisis is lifted. On January 7th at 10:50 a.m., things do seem to be going according to this script. Paris is just smoked for 20 minutes. The fire plane has arrived at the scene. The commander at the time could even calmly analyze the fire on the radio and go to the sky despite the smoke, but most of them are still blue, and this sense of control lasted only a few minutes. Suddenly, a slight shift in the wind direction. The flames that were originally on the other side of the ridge turned over in an instant. A firefighter at the scene later recalled that from that moment on, this fire was a wildfire for about 4 or 5 minutes. After a few minutes, he's completely mutated. And then at 6 p.m., the same thing happened 30 miles away at the Eaton fire. More desperate this time. The first fire engines arrived at the scene within 2 or 3 minutes of the fire. The helicopter was also in position within half an hour. Elise says this is the world's top response speed, but in the face of winds approaching 100 miles per hour, the air fire extinguishing force that humans are proud of appears extremely powerless. The helicopter in the canyon was grounded shortly after it arrived. It's too windy. The water never hits the target, and in Palisades, 7:45 p.m. command was forced to issue the same order and all planes were grounded. At that moment, the ground forces lost their air cover. They can only watch as the food goes out of control. Here we're going to take a very central engineering concept, phase transitions. The reason why everyone couldn't save that night, it's because he made the phase transition from burning vegetation to burning buildings. A tree can only maintain high temperature for about a minute or two when it burns. But a house burns down. That's a super heat source that lasts for more than an hour. Your sofa, mattresses, cars in the garage, the energy that these modern appliances release when they burn. The density far exceeds the dead branches and leaves in the forest. And here's what's even scarier. This high-energy combustion produced a deadly byproduct of the storm. Don't think of fire as a wall. In reality, the wind blows up thousands of burning fires the size of golf balls. Hit the community like a blizzard. These fireballs can travel over a mile, straight past the barrier that the firefighters worked so hard to dig. Fall on your roof, drill into the vent, ignite your backyard. At this point, the traditional fire tactics manual is completely obsolete. According to standard process, it takes about 15 firefighters and 4 fire engines to build a house on fire. But when 10 houses across the block were simultaneously set ablaze by a fish ban, you need 150 firefighters and dozens of vehicles in an instant. This is more than any city's fire protection system can handle. There was utter chaos, streets blocked by fleeing vehicles. Someone had to escape by car. Police and firefighters were forced to give up the option of putting out the fire and went into pure rescue mode in the thick smoke. The thieves can't even see the hood of the car. All they can do is carry the old man with leg problems out of the house, and then watch everything behind you turn to ashes. As the field commander said, "We tried. Brother really tried his best. Get out when the smoke clears." Investigators discovered an extremely conspicuous phenomenon among the charred ruins in the neighborhood that was almost razed to the ground. There are a few houses that stand sporadically intact. This is not God's blessing. It wasn't luck, but buried in the rubble. To solve this puzzle, we must bring in a point person, Dr. Jack Cohen. He started studying fires in 1976, and after decades of experimentation, they came to a conclusion that was rather embarrassing to the traditional fire protection community. We get it wrong all the time. We put all our energy into trying to put out the forest fires. But actually, this is an engineering exam on house lighting. Why do you say so? Because what really burns down a house is never the terrifying flames that come over that wall. It's those humble lurkers. According to statistics, up to 90% of house damage is due to bans. Under the influence of strong winds, These are prohibited, not one or two. It was a blizzard of snow hitting buildings. Insurance, the Institute for Business and Home. Security presented this in a giant wind tunnel lab. They make hurricanes with 105 giant fans, spraying tens of thousands of combustion particles on experimental houses. Experimental results reveal two of the most lethal vulnerabilities in a house's defense system. It's like a Trojan horse. The most hidden killer is the vent. The house of rice needs to breathe. So there are usually vents under the eaves, but in a fire, and these vents are basically vacuum cleaners for inhaling dead air. Ordinary gauze can't stop tiny sparks at all. Once they got into the attic, we'll ignite dry wooden beams inside. The house blew itself up from the inside, and people out there don't even know what's going on. Another Achilles heel is Area 0. That's about 5 feet from the outside of the house. Many people like to grow shrubs here, sawdust decoration, or connect the wooden fence directly to the wall. In a firestorm, these things will be the first to ignite. They're like an ignition lock. Directly feed the flame to the main structure of the house or the windows. The house that survived the Los Angeles fire is the best textbook. His neighbor's 3 other houses in the same driveway were reduced to ashes. And he's standing. The investigation found that the homeowner didn't actually do any high-tech defenses. He just did 3 basic things right by installing a non-combustible A-grade roof, replaced the vents with metal with apertures less than 1/8 inch, and ruthlessly cleared all flammable material within 5 feet of the house. Just a few simple actions cut off the objects in the nearby house. But there's a crueler logic here: swarm immunity. When the fire becomes a transmission-proof urban fire, your neighbor's house is the biggest threat you face. If a neighbor's house catches fire, the radiant heat and fish density he generates will far exceed that of a forest fire. Purely individual defenses become vulnerable. So it's no longer a question of individuals sweeping the snow. As long as there are still unfortified houses in the community, the whole block is still sitting on a powder keg. If physical destruction is still within our acceptable range, so what's next? It may send a chill down the spine of the entire middle class. This fire didn't just burn houses. He's burning through our financial safety net. American League chairperson Jerome Powell actually put it very bluntly at a congressional hearing. If insurance companies evacuate high-risk areas because they can't afford to pay, what happens next? The chain of logic is brutal and clear and uninsured. Banks can't make mortgages. Without loans, there can be no buyers. There can be no buyers. The value of your property, the largest reservoir of wealth for the average family, goes to zero in an instant. This is not alarmism. This is already happening. If we don't change the way we build homes and communities, in the future, large areas will become financial no man's land. No matter how good the scenery is, it is worthless. History has already given us the answer. The London Buddha in 1666. The Chicago Buddha in 1871. When they burned, it was no worse than it is today. How did humanity end the fire era in those cities? Not by praying for rain, not by bigger pipes, but by a complete engineering revolution. When the insurance company said something bad about Chicago, unless you switch to brick and steel, otherwise we will no longer be in the castle, and so the wooden house disappeared. And the unburnable city was born. The kind of urban fires that burn for days on end are really a thing of the past. Now it's our turn to make a choice. We have to recognize the reality that we cannot control the climate. You can't control when the Santa Ana wind blows. I can't control whether the air humidity is only 10%. Those natural switches are not in our hands. But the one that we absolutely have control over is the pile that's set in front of nature. That's our home. This is a war that must be won before disaster strikes. Instead of praying for the wind to change when the fire comes, why don't you go up on the roof now? Replace those shingles, block that humble vent. Because there are no flukes in physics, only cause and effect. Thanks for watching. Like to keep in mind to keep safe. See you next time.